I'd like to call this meeting of the Sustainability Advisory Board to order on Monday, October 5th. We have 6 people attending virtually, and we have 2 here in person. So, having called the meeting to order, would someone make a motion, please, to approve the minutes from August 3rd?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. And Vic seconded. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay. Wow, Michelle, you got here just in time. Community composting with UW Oshkosh. And I bet you and Brad are going to do a tag team on this, huh?
Yeah, and in fact, because of COVID, I actually have not spent any time on other projects like sponsored programs like this one since our last meeting. So if there are any updates, Brad would probably have them. So Brad, if you want to, I defer to you.
Brad, do we have anything on that, or have you been busy with other stuff too?
Sort of. No updates on, specifically. I think it was that we were looking for a grant, and we had needed either the city or the county as a partner. I don't think that official, step has been taken, but I know that grant cycle will come back around again. So I think it's worth having a conversation pretty soon to see about what that would all entail. And maybe sort of establishing some sort of memorandum of understanding between the city and the university about, what a community composting partnership or program would look like. So I think there's definitely some exploratory work or some investigation to do there on that front. Just kind of figure out and get our ducks in a row, as it were. A nod to a later agenda item. But the one other thing I will say is that right now the biogas program is looking to get in touch with businesses in the downtown area, particularly those that have food waste. And so I sent out an email to some individuals late last week to try and set up a meeting to basically start collecting the food waste from some of the businesses in the downtown area. And so we're hoping to move forward with that process.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll just keep this on the agenda, and you guys can let us know when things are happening, right? Got it. Okay, then let's talk about ducks. How about a duck discussion?
Sounds good.
Vic informed me she has read every single thing on here, and so have I, so I trust you're all up to speed, right? What we're hoping to do is decide on, first of all, if we want to recommend a duck ordinance to the city, and I would say yes, we do. And then we want to see which, what we think that should entail. And if we want to model it on our chicken policy, or if we want to just start over from scratch with ducks. It has to be redone because, it will affect the animal ordinance, because the animal ordinance says no waterfowl, and ducks are obviously waterfowl. So it will be affecting other ordinances anyway, but I believe that we could write a duck ordinance that's separate without having to include it with chicken ordinance.
Yeah, and the nice thing about the chicken and bee, like some of that stuff, we could use similar language for like appeals of permit denials or like revocations of permits. The same procedures could apply, so I think it'd be the standards of practice. Those would be perhaps unique to ducks, but I don't see why we couldn't leverage some of the work we've done already on the others for, here's the procedure you go through if you're denied a permit, or if you want to appeal a permit denial, whatever, if your permit's revoked or if you fail to meet the standards.
So, yeah, we've got all the hard part done. Now all we need to do is convert it to ducks.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think basically what we'd written in the duck ordinance discussion, which you all looked at, right? I think the basic part of that is going to need to be included, but then I did like, if you looked at the other ones, like from the city of Salem, where they don't even require it to be, they simply give you guidelines. It's not an ordinance there. There's no license or anything in Salem, but they did have some very, what do I want to say? Some interesting points that maybe we would want to include. For example, they give the discussion about chicken and duck facilities, which of course we'd only want the duck part. The city of Yonkers, so we looked at that one, which is an actual ordinance, gave us the definition of terms. So I would think that if we were to pull parts of all of these, we'd pretty much have the work done. Is there anything that any of you saw in any of this material that you would especially recommend that we keep or that we delete, not use?
Personally, I really think just making sure it's included that there is some sort of water facility for ducks. It was mentioned in one of them, just like how important it is for like their bathing process versus like how chickens do more of like a dust bath. Ducks do need that water situation. I don't know if we need to put in requirements about the dimensions of this water facility, like if that's needed. One of them said to use a kiddie pool, and that was sufficient. I don't know for how many ducks we're looking at.
Well, and another one said that you could just use a big dog dish.
Correct.
So
So the
it's-
volume of water,
Right.
I don't feel confident in making that decision, but I definitely think it needs to be noted.
Probably the number also that they're allowed to
Right.
keep would be, and
Right.
with the chickens, we allow 4 chickens per yard, per permit, per yard.
I feel like it would be similar.
Yeah,
Would it be 4 chickens or 4 ducks or a combination?
well, they have totally different habitats, basically.
Right.
So
I think we'd have
They-
to look into that.
I think they'd have to be
Comfortably.
separate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And one of the ordinances, one of the other cities, and forgive me, I don't remember which one, didn't allow drakes or male ducks. And I think that's something we should look into too, if we're looking at just a hen, or are we allowing a drake as well? And then what difference that would make. I think it was Salem, but I could be mistaken.
I believe that what we were looking at initially was just having hens,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where you get the eggs.
Correct.
And
not wrong.
also, the whole point about designating the ducks, not drunks, ducks, as heavy-body egg-laying hens, no
Mhm.
drakes,
Okay.
so.
Just confirming that
Yeah.
that was what we were still on board with. Okay.
That was Yonkers, by the way. It was
Thank you.
keeping of roosters, cocks, or drakes are expressly prohibited.
Okay. Thank you. Knew it was one of them.
Okay. Was there anyone else that saw anything in their reading of all this information that has any other recommendations for us to include?
So I don't necessarily have a recommendation, but even looking at the Salem guidance, the rules,
God,
Who's
Sorry.
doing that?
that's terrible.
oh, that's Ken printing something.
Oh.
I was printing something. Sorry.
So that's okay. So I really like, so really this comes down to, I mean, in their respect, it's where they're properly zoned. You don't necessarily have to create an ordinance if they're, if the zoning is appropriate for them for us to have ducks in. Correct? That might be a question more for Steve.
Actually, Bob, I think we would have to create an ordinance because right now the zoning doesn't really cover animals. Animals is a separate chapter.
Okay.
So the zoning won't address that in the zoning ordinance.
And that's probably the difference between Oshkosh and Salem at this point, is
Yeah.
that their ordinance or their ordinances are maybe more flexible in that regards.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I would
okay.
agree.
So I'm going to announce out in public, since it's completely legal. I have 4 chickens myself, 4 hens, and so I find that that's a pretty good number to manage in regards to that, and um, in regards to, and similar in size, but not animal. You know, it's a pretty comfortable number, and they're pretty, even the chicks are pretty comfortable to manage and such. So, question in regards to, do we? Nope, hold on. Forgot where I saw that one. Go ahead if someone has anything else.
Well, I was just gonna comment that some of the reading I saw said that ducks are very social animals, and they recommended having at least 3. So 3 or 4, yeah. I don't think there's any need to go in multiples of 3.
No.
Did anyone else have anything?
Something that I was thinking about, just because, you know, someone had asked if this should be with the chicken ordinance, do we want to consider what that would look like? Because we're going to get the question if people can have ducks and chickens, as for how much space that would require, or what they would need to do to be able to have both. Because they could probably, feasibly do that. We would just need to lay out, I think, what that space would need to look like, perhaps, or maybe we don't want to even. I feel like that's something we need to set up beforehand, because it's probably going to be a thing.
Yeah, a lot of the
It's nice to keep
mentioned-
most of it separate, but plan for that.
Yeah, I know one of them listed how like a lot of people will maybe start with chickens, but then move to ducks, or vice versa. So I agree. I feel like some people may want 2 chickens, 2 ducks for like the diversity of eggs and egg size. I agree with your consideration.
One thing I couldn't determine from reading it, because it differed in every ordinance, was the square footage required in concert with the combination of all fowl in terms of their numbers and mix. I didn't see anything that said why that was the case.
For which one?
They-
Where am I looking?
Now, when you look at a lot of the ordinances, there's usually a limit placed on the total number of fowl, and then there's usually a recommended or even an explicit limit on the combination of chickens and ducks. Is that something that needs to be addressed, and can that only be done if they're in the same ordinance?
For example, where it says a minimum of 4 square feet per bird is required, something like that.
Yeah, and
Right.
I'm looking at the Salem one, says 3 square feet of coop space per chicken or duck, 6 square feet of run space for each.
But we do have language like that in the chicken ordinance.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it would have to be in addition to that if they were going to add ducks, right?
Yeah, I would think we'd have a specific one for ducks, and then we'd probably have to look at, would we have to, like they were asking, tie both ordinances together somehow, as far as
The thing is
supporting a
that
total.
ducks don't need at all the same habitat as the chickens do. They don't need to have roosts. They don't roost.
Sure.
They just need like a dog house that has
Right.
straw on the bottom, and they'll go in the corners and
Oh.
nest
Okay.
and keep themselves warm, which is, there's a lot of things that ducks seem to be easier to raise from what I was reading through this.
As long as you have water, yeah.
Yeah, as long as you have water for them.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So somebody started to say something. Who was that?
I'll say something. So the other thing too that I think is different between all of the ordinances is the setback for the coops or the pens, of how far they need to be from the property line and adjacent to any of the dwellings. So, is that correct, Steve? I mean, like for the current chicken ordinance,
Yep.
what's the amount of distance they have to be off the property line?
So for chickens, it would be the accessory structure setback, so whatever your,
That's-
like a detached garage would have to be, so in most
Yep.
zoning districts, it'd be like 3 feet.
Okay.
For bees, it would be 5 feet, and then, we'd have to determine for ducks, what's the appropriate figure. Ideally, I think we would want it to be something that could be, like for the chickens and the bees, we put a figure, but we didn't tie it to specific zoning districts per se. We just said in all zoning districts, because zoning classifications can change over time for a particular property. And so we don't want to have to update this ordinance every time we update the zoning ordinance.
Sure.
We'd like it to be able to kind of run with the zoning changes automatically. So I think that's something to keep in mind too. But we could say like accessory structure setbacks. We could say 25 feet from a house, principal structure. That language like that we used in the chicken and bee ordinances.
Sure. Yep. Yeah. So the Marion one indicates 10 feet away from structures, or not structures, but the property line. Looks like, is it Salem? Salem has 3 feet away from any other building or building on the property, and 25 feet away from a residence on an adjacent unit of land. Says, it doesn't say anything about the property line. So,
Okay.
so it looks like, sounds like we have a default there in regards to, how we handle, the setbacks.
I could see the setback from the property line, but as far as how far it is from another building, like a garage or a house, that doesn't really make sense in Wisconsin, I don't think, because if you were to set, and I call it a doghouse because that's something we can visualize, but if you were to put your duck coop basically right against the house, you're gonna have less exposure from the wind and stuff. It'll be easier for them to winter.
Sure.
So I would be uncomfortable with that portion of that.
I
Sure.
agree, yeah.
Yeah, I think for the setbacks from the lot lines, there's definitely a case to be made for having at least some minimum setback from the lot line, because the idea is you're trying to make sure you're not right up against your neighbors and vice versa, just like with any structure, other than a fence. But obviously, for your own buildings, I could see what Margie's saying there.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I guess I want to ask Brandon and Stephen then, do you have enough feedback from us at this point to be able to pull something together for an ordinance, a proposed ordinance?
I would think so. Brandon, you can weigh in too if you think, how you feel about it, the amount of feedback we've received, but I think it seems like we have enough that we could start to craft something.
Well, yeah, I guess my only question, and maybe we can talk about this at different times, me and you, Stephen, but I wasn't around for when the bee and chicken ordinance was written, so I'm not too sure on the process.
Sure.
However, everything that we've talked about thus far, they're all good questions. I still think, I'm thinking about the couple chicken coops that I've seen doing inspections, and they are right up against the property line. I don't know if those are then, I'm not familiar enough with the chicken ordinance to know if those are constructed illegally, or if we would for some reason be doing something different with the ducks. I still think that there's minor differences that need to be adjusted for the new ordinance, but we would still potentially get to use a lot of what we've already created with the duck and bee ordinance as stated in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and Brandon, we can talk about the process. We would be working with the attorney's office on it, and so I can kind of work with you on that.
Okay, well, I say we turn it over to their capable hands and bring it back when you're ready to, I guess, comfortable with that, right?
Sure. Yep.
Thank you for everyone's input.
Yes. Okay, I had sent a couple of things on the fossil fuel divestment. Brandon had managed to find, which I had not been able to do, so I really appreciate this. In October of 2013, we had attempted to, we had proposed to the council that the city divest from all fossil fuel investments. And so what I did was take that language and I attempted to update it. And that's what I sent you in an email yesterday. Did you all have a chance to see the newer one also?
Yes.
Okay. I think that I was able to update everything without making anything not work anymore, you know. The thing is, in 7 years, a lot has happened, you know. But the only question that I had at all was the fourth paragraph, the fourth whereas in the new one is just like the old one. And I don't know if the number given there for gigatons of carbon dioxide is still correct or not. I was hoping that perhaps somebody like Brad would be able to maybe know how to research that and tell us, or Pat maybe would know a way to find out if that needed changed. I don't know that it does. It was the only thing that I was unsure about, so I wanted to raise the question. And then I did update the language at the end after the paragraph that says, whereas the Common Council approved the sustainability plan in May of 2012 and then again in March of 2020. That next paragraph and the ones beyond that, I updated to the current sustainability plan because we had changed our language rather significantly between, in the plan between those two times. So that's basically what my changes were. Any discussion or questions? I like it.
I'm wondering if we should have the actual page number. I don't know how many people will actually go to the sustainability plan to look at this, but besides having just the section, I think it might be good to have the page from the 2021 that it's in so that people could find it.
Oh, yeah, we can add
They
that
feel so
quite
inclined.
simply, yeah. I did add
Or
a
a link or
citation
something.
too from some other information that I'd found, which I can't find right now to tell you about it, but it's in there. Pat, did you have something? I think you're on mute, honey.
Oh, sorry. I don't know.
I got you unmuted, Pat. You're good to go.
Okay. I don't, I wasn't around in 2013, so I'm not sure the process. We discuss it obviously, and then does it get looked at by, say, the people who manage the investments? Is there any information from them in terms of how much of the city's money is invested in fossil fuels?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to take that
Plans?
one, Stephen, or do you want me to?
Well,
I
has
think with
it gone through that process of looking at that already in terms of updated? Have you done that already, or?
No, we would have the sustainability board approve what we think is current information and ready to go, and then we would give that to the planning department, who is our liaison, and I believe it would go to Mark next. Am I correct, Stephen?
Or would long-range finance have to look at it at all, or?
Well, I think that he has to approve it to go to long-range finance, but I'm not sure. Yes, Pat, this would end up going through the long-range finance committee, which is a total separate.
Do we have to make a recommendation on it without knowing that information or not? Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know how this would affect pension plans. Maybe you do, but I don't.
That was their argument in the past, 7 years ago, was that it would affect, or had the potential to affect plans. The argument that we made then, and I would make again, is that by not investing in fossil fuels, but investing in renewable energy, which we ask in the last paragraph, the further we go down this alternative energy road, the better that's actually going to end up being for long range.
I I agree in general with that. I just like seeing numbers on it, you know. I'm wondering.
That's
know.
that's not our, that's not our, that's not in our purview. Our purview is to say what would be best for the sustainability of the city.
Okay.
And then
Oh,
if long-range finance decides that this is whatever, for whatever reason, that they don't want to do it, it's not going to happen anyway, you know?
so we're just discussing it in principle without looking at the actual numbers involved.
Yes,
or the-
we have no power to affect that. All we can do is make the recommendation to the, ultimately to the council, that the city adopt this plan. Is that right, Bob? Am I making sense on this? Okay, thank you.
Well, and I think we make the point as a whole too, that it will be more costly overall for everyone if we do not divest from fossil fuels. So whether, you know, it affects plans, different things like that, you know, we're all going to pay in one way or another if we don't divest and do things like that. So
Yes,
Okay,
which
so the
it says
argument
many
are
places in our
more
sustainability plan, people just don't read it.
It's more general arguments as opposed to specific. Looking at, okay, you're saying that's out of our purview. We're just doing just general recommendations and arguments. Okay.
Right, and if this resolution were to pass, we wouldn't probably want specific numbers in there or anything anyway, Pat, because those are gonna fluctuate with markets and things. Whereas this
Right.
just says we want to be more sustainable, and this is a way to
Right.
do it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. If it's, you know, if it was my personal investments, I'd be looking at the numbers, but I guess in this case, that's not our job, so. You know.
Did anybody else have anything they wanted to share on this? Bob?
sorry.
Sure. Thank you. I guess I understand that the benefit of say us taking an approval on this and then passing it over to the long range finance committee. I'm not sure that if it doesn't pass there, that the recommendation shouldn't be communicated onto the council. That's kind of what I heard in what you were talking about, Margie.
Well, and
So I just
maybe I
want-
said that wrong, Bob. What happened last time was we gave it to Mark Roloff, the city manager, first, and then he passed it through Long Range Finance. However, at the time, the chair of Long Range Finance was also the liaison to the Sustainability Board. And
Okay.
so it died because of that. Basically, our liaison chose not to take it to the council
Okay.
based on his other obligations. So, I agree with you. I think it should go to the council. So,
Well, I have no problem with it going to the long range finance committee, but my concern with it is that if they don't approve it or advise it, it shouldn't die there. It should continue to move forward, because it's not just it's a long range issue, but it's also a goal or an outcome of the Sustainability Advisory Board to be promoting this. And ultimately that should end up at the council no matter what.
I agree wholeheartedly, and we're gonna rely on you to make sure that happens.
Okay.
Was there anything in the actual language that anyone was uncomfortable with, or do you think that we can go ahead and pass this, approve this to pass on to the next step in the process?
I'm wondering if it wouldn't be beneficial just to, you know, Pat's point, to have something, I know there's got to be some kind of number about how much that climate change will cost us over time with the
Oh, I
effects that
see
we'll
what
see.
you
Of course,
mean.
it's not going to be 100% on. We won't know until it happens, but you know, there have been projections that have been made that we can put in here to show the devastating effect that we'll have over time on that. So I think that would be helpful to put in, so we can put, you know, kind of show this in a financial way as well for those who are concerned about that.
Yeah, I would say there are probably places where there are lots of data about costs that can be avoided, sort of avoiding future costs. And my one comment about the 565 gigatons, I can probably search out that number, Margie. I've been kind of trying to snoop around here and see if I can find it, but I'm not having any luck. I know total atmospheric like carbon budget is like 2,900 gigatons. I know we're approaching that number, but I mean I don't think we're certainly close just yet. But I don't know what the total amount is that we sort of have left remaining in the budget to put into the atmosphere.
Okay, well, why don't I suggest that we bring this back next month, which will give Brad a chance to do some research for us, which I know he would love to do. And Michelle, would you feel comfortable writing a whereas statement for the cost benefit portion of this? You're on mute. There you go.
Yep. I was just looking for my agenda so I could write stuff down. I could, if I can find that financial data. I think we also should have a whereas about how our community specifically is affected by climate change as well, because we've seen that with the heavy amounts of rainfall in a short period of time and the flooding that we get. Some of that is stormwater management, but some of that too is just the events that we've seen in the past that have been becoming more frequent and affect us personally as well.
If I could add something, Michelle, one of the things that I've been watching, because I'm a pretty avid investor myself, is I don't know if this enters into the calculus of the long-term finance of the city and the best interest of the city and its workers, but the fossil fuel industry has been facing headwinds for quite some time, and the COVID crisis has actually pushed that into overdrive. There's been declines in fossil fuel industry growth on a massive scale. So in terms of long-term investment for any institution, the money would seem to be in something that's growing at the rate of 10% a year, and that's renewable energy. So I don't know if we want to speak to that in any way, or at least somehow, mitigate any concerns about risk. But it's really in the best interest of the community as overall, not just environmentally, but also economically from an investment perspective.
Thank you, Ken, for sharing that. Yes, we definitely do want to. That's sort of what you were thinking of, right, Michelle? I mean, sort of along the same lines. You're on mute again.
But no, I know. I wasn't ready to talk yet. I was getting there. So I mean, it's part of it. We do want to talk about that investment piece, because that's obviously what we're talking about. But also, I was talking about the cost overall of not divesting, just as the repercussions that we will see as a country, and what that will cost us to have to fix the things after they happen, like the weather events and all these other things that will happen if we don't change what we're doing right now.
And I agree. They are two separate things, Margie. There was, I think Michelle's definitely speaking to the cost brought on by investing in things that damage the environment. And that's sort of a mid to long term sort of assessment and, risk perspective. I was speaking more of the immediate. If the obstacle to doing this is immediate concerns over the next 5 to 10 years of what that does to retirement plans or city investments, then I was speaking to the separate risk mitigation of, hey, this might not actually be in the best interest to be in fossil fuels given the current trends. So they are different.
Maybe 3 whereases, or I thought there was already one that had already said that fossil fuel investment is going to become
a dinosaur.
Less beneficial.
Funny.
No.
I like it.
What? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Fossil fuel will become a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full circle thing.
Might I suggest that any of us that have an idea for an additional whereas in this, just go ahead and write it and send it to Brandon. And that way, they can take a look at that and see where they overlap and, you know, make sure that, and add to it for next month, and then we'll bring the whole thing back next month. Does that sound okay?
So when should we submit that by?
What?
When should we submit our whereas statements to Brandon by for the next meeting?
Oh, that's a good point.
I would say if you can get them to me in 2 weeks, that'd be good, and label them in red. Make your text red, so I know the difference between what Margie already wrote and what's coming in that's new. So I'm gonna get a bunch of different emails because we're not using like a Google Doc or something, right? So.
Yeah, I did send that out, I think, as a Microsoft Word document, so if they could just, they could send just the whereas. What about if they just send just the whereas statement to you, Brandon, and then you can kind of position stuff? And that
Works.
you would like in 2 weeks, so if today is the 3rd, that's probably about the 17th? Today's not the 3rd, what's today, the 5th?
Today's the 5th.
Okay, so it's that many more days out, what, the 19th?
Yes.
By October 19th.
Is that fair?
I think that's awesome.
Okay.
That give the rest of you time? Sure. Doesn't matter when the deadline is. We always do it the night before, right?
Same thing.
Okay, well, we'll bring that back. Moving on then. Michelle, a report on the Menominee Shoreland restoration. Yeah.
So I did receive communication from the city that people have been complaining about the height of the plants. I had sent a letter to an email to the city in the beginning of the season saying, hey, you know what? This pandemic is going down. It's going to affect how many volunteers we're able to get out there, how many people will be able to have work at once. What we're even going to be able to do in terms of height, and that I think we should work more on just general maintenance of the site than to focus on height. And we're struggling to try to reduce the impact of invasive species that keep coming in from the lake. So I did request at that time that we mostly focus on that, but I did not receive a response. And recently, they did request we reduce the height. Justin Mitchell has been amazing because I've had a lot of health challenges. And he has stepped up to get some work days scheduled. And they did go out there and trim some plants this past weekend. I believe Justin and Janet did that with Zinc. And I think there's another one scheduled on Saturday. I should know more about this, obviously. But I've kind of let Justin take the wheel a little bit to help me out. But I can look that up as we go. I should have seen that coming. I apologize. But in any case, I did respond to the city saying, you know, we're doing our best. We're putting the health of our volunteers first. And so, you know, the height, we'll try to do what we can, but it's unfortunate that that is what people are complaining to the city about in these times. But, you know, we'll do the best that we can.
Okay, thank you for that report. I have to confess I'm a little bit disappointed. It is 2020, and that's not really been a good year.
Well, and I think, shoot, I just
disappointed in the city, Michelle, not disappointed in you, to be clear.
No, I know. And I hope that people will, if they're enjoying the enjoying the site and enjoying going out there and seeing the plants, and in general like to see the flowers, then if you could please email the city, let them know, email the Parks Department, and just, let them know how much you enjoy it, if you like the hike, anything like that, because any support we receive is really helpful, because we know that most people don't say anything unless they're angry, and don't usually go out of their way to email unless they're not happy about something and want it changed. So the more people we can get supporting us verbally or even written, I think write your newspaper, any of that really, really helps.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Sure. My question actually, so are you just getting a general email from the Parks Director or from someone that represents the city, or how is that, how are you getting that information?
Sure. I'm getting it from Bill Sturm, the city forester.
Okay. And is he indicating that it's multiples of people, or is it concerns here and there?
I
Or is
can
it the
look to see
neighborhood?
I'm sure it's the few that have been complaining for years, but I can't say for sure. I
Okay.
can look at the actual email if I can find it to see. And I can say, let's see. So the update from Justin, I can just give you a brief update here. He said 4 to 5 weekends ago, volunteers were out, did a really nice job cleaning up the approaches to memorial trees. Much of the southwest section of the trail along the water was cleared, along with removing any of the taller plants from that section. And again, 2 weekends ago, they did more work. There has been a lot of work going on. We'll have at least one more work day between 9/21 and 10/11. Another one between 10/16 and November 6th. We're doing lots. Let me find that language, and I can tell you exactly what they had said for the complaint.
I think the takeaway from this is the reality is that it's not that people aren't maintaining it, just people were uncomfortable maintaining it for a certain period of time. And now it sounds like our response is to play catch up as much as we can in taking care of the makeup, which is pretty routine for 2020 at this point. And so I know no one likes getting those messages indicating that someone's not satisfied with something that we might have done or didn't do. But let's not dwell upon that as much, because I think, Michelle, you know that you were responsive, and your responsiveness led to people beginning to starting up to maintaining that area again. So it's happened. Did it work out the way we wanted to? No, but 2020 didn't either. So let's just not dwell on it that much. I'll talk to Bill. You don't have to give any more information on who the message is from and everything. But we'll figure this one out. So.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, anything else on that, or moving on? Okay, social media. I'll kind of address that one initially tonight. I did go in and I spoke with Mark Roloff, and after I explained the situation to him as best I could, which probably wasn't as good as it could have been, but he said after talking with staff, he was able to confirm that the planning support staff can post material anytime during the month that we want to give it to them, which made me think that maybe he hadn't totally understood my message. That they would be committing themselves, and I think by them he means you, Brandon, committing themselves to post something within 24 hours or less when it's received. And any of us are welcome to provide Brandon with information to post at any time. If the staff member has any concern, they can contact their supervisor for direction. And I can share this info with the rest of the Sustainability Board. We will work to post items as soon as possible. If this does not work after we give this a shot, we can revisit the issue. So I would like to, well, Mark says I'd like to try this and see how it works. And I say I'd like to try this and see how it works. So why don't we give as much information as we can this month to Brandon and or Stephen. I don't know which of you is doing it, but Brandon's.
For SAB, Brandon's taken over the Facebook page at this point. Yep.
Yep. So, and see if that works. I think that both Vic and Ken brought up some very valid points last month, and I did try to share those with Mark. I don't know how successful I was. One of them being the timeliness and how important it is in a social media atmosphere to have timeliness and be able to take a picture at the farmer's market and post it right away and not wait for it to, you know, I mean, it does no good if it's already over, you know, so,
Agreed.
but maybe we can try that this month, Vic, and see,
Sure. So
what,
essentially what was happening, just not a month at a time, do shorter turnaround.
yes, go
Okay.
ahead and submit it any time when you see it. Just, poor Brandon, we're just gonna fill up your inbox. You ready?
If any of us have time to even get to that point too, like I said last time, I mean, it's just not
Right.
easy to like on the fly. And Brandon and I had a discussion too about how a lot of it comes down to sharing what's already out there. And so that can be hard for me to try and find, or anyone really, to try and find like the verbiage or the right way to get it to Brandon of this is a specific post I'd like shared.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Can
but-
we just forward, what was the word I want to say? Can we just share
Brandon?
something just with him that he could then share?
That can get tricky because that can start to involve his personal Facebook page. I don't really know that that's an appropriate route to take
Yes.
as this is
And it
not.
also can get mucked up by privacy settings all the way along the
Correct.
line. So every time you have an additional pass-through, it complicates matters, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
And
is why.
it's almost
think-
impossible
Sorry,
to
Bob.
tag people this way.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah.
So I'm not the most Facebook literate person out there,
That's
but I
okay.
believe that because the Sustainability Advisory Board has a page,
Yes.
correct? And could we, and when we want to share something, we could share it through Messenger to Brandon, because he would be the contact for any messages that the page gets, correct?
Typically, Bob, actually, I think I was told with the landmarks page, and I think it'd be consistent with the SAB page, is that due to open records and such, it would have to go through city email. A similar question came up about
Sure.
using Messenger with the Landmarks Commission, and that was the answer we were given.
However, my thought is it possible, Vic, for instance, if you find something for you to just then share it to the sustainability page, like from your personal.
Maybe, but then we're also getting into the point of then I'm using my personal page. I'm not speaking
Right.
as the board anymore. And we've had issues in the past. I defer to the letter that was written and sent to the school boards about vehicle idling and how some of that feedback was actually negative. And I would not like to be put in that situation again where I receive that negative feedback personally.
Yeah, so I guess going forward,
Or not to.
if anybody finds something that they come across and they would like to have it shared on the Facebook page for the time being, just do your best to take a screenshot of it,
There you
or
go.
take a, copy the link, or do whatever you can do if you're wanting that to be shared, and send it to my email.
And we'll go from there.
Ken, you had something to share earlier, I think. No?
No?
You're over it, huh? Okay. Did anybody else have any thoughts on this?
Work in progress.
Okay, well, we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Okay, moving on then to agenda items for a future meeting. So far, I have that we will that we'll just let the community composting with UWO sort of sit there until time to use it. That hopefully we'll have a duck ordinance in the next month or two to look at, understanding that it will take longer than that to get it passed because it has to go through legal and through the council and everything. So the fossil fuel divestment resolution proposal, we're going to get any additional whereases that we'd like to see to Brandon by October 19th, so that can be incorporated for next month. And we're going to send everything that we see that we think, this is like the perfect time to be really using social media to connect with people about sustainability, because
You think?
everybody's doing things so differently than they used to that I'm sure there's some great new ideas out there that we should be sharing. So anyway, anything you find, please send that to Brandon's city address so that it will go through the proper channels. And is there anything else that we needed to put on the agenda for next month, which is November 2nd?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, seeing no suggestions, you can always let Brandon know if you think of something between now and the end of the, something you want to deal with. As a reminder, in January, we will be reevaluating our goals again and choosing projects that we want to work on for next year, so keep that in mind. Okay, then our next meeting will be on Monday, November 2nd. Right here at City Hall or at home or wherever you'd like to call in from. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Bye.
Thank you all for coming.